Hey everyone, my name is Tatum. I'm a college student in the US and I'm making this video today to document my progress learning Japanese. I started studying 90 days ago following the mass immersion approach, at least studying intensively, and I want to take some time to document not only my growth but also just the effectiveness of this method. I know not everyone's going to be interested in all the information, so here are a couple timestamps so you can jump ahead if you want to see my progress, but let's go. So a little bit more about me. I've always kind of been interested in Japanese culture. Growing up, I played Pokemon, I watched anime, and listened to a little bit of Japanese music, I guess. But mainly somewhere around early high school is when I really started getting interested in learning Japanese. So I bought the Genki textbook, I did a little bit of research online, but I really didn't get much further than a couple chapters. And up until a couple months ago, I really only knew just a total hodgepodge of words and grammar structures. At one point, I had learned all the kana a couple summers ago. I went through and learned hiragana and katakana. And I knew a little bit of kanji, but really not that much. So coming into this whole mass immersion approach, I really had just a very little understanding about how Japanese actually worked and a couple of assumptions and years of experience with it, but nothing really concrete. So I figured that during quarantine would be the best time for me to spend a lot more time immersing and following this approach. And, you know, knowing my personality, I wouldn't have been very happy not following through and actually eventually learning Japanese. So I figured starting 90 days ago, I should put a little bit more effort in and actually follow this approach. So for the past 90 days, I have been following the mass immersion approach created by Matt vs. Japan. And essentially what the tenets of this approach are, I'll put a link in the description for the website if you're interested in learning more. But the essential premises are that language is acquired through spending time immersing in your target language. So when you spend time reading or listening to native audio or watching Japanese media made by natives for natives, by spending time immersing in all of this in the language that you're trying to learn with a little bit of supplemental study on the side, usually with a spaced repetition software like Anki, which is all explained in the guide below. By using these things, this is the primary method through which you acquire your target language. For Japanese specifically, in the Quick Start guide that is also listed below, they recommend originally going through a period called Recognition Remembering the Kanji. And this is based on a book by James Heisig, Remembering the Kanji, in which tons of kanji are given a mnemonic, an English word. If I give an example, this one right here is husband, and you can see that there is the kanji for it next to it. And what Matt vs. Japan's custom deck does is it takes the 1,000 most common kanji from this book, which actually contains all 2,300, I believe, of the Joyo kanji. But his custom deck takes the top 1,000. The new deck, I believe, also includes radicals. And you learn just these 1,000 kanji with their mnemonics through this system. And there's more about that, but essentially this is the process I followed. And I studied 30 cards a day. So every day in Anki, I would add 30 new cards. And I set a retiring interval with the MIA retirement add-on of 9 months. And that is exactly what Matt vs. Japan recommends. I started 90 days ago, so today is June 18th, and that was March 26th, 2020. The most reviews I ever had while doing RRTK was 191 cards, which was right towards the end. It was on April 23rd, and I finally finished on April 30th, or April 30th, I guess, was the day that I saw my last unseen card. So at that point, it was just review. My retention rate that whole time was about 90%, but recently my kanji knowledge has started slipping a little bit. It's really not bad. A lot of my intervals are still around 3 to 4 months, I think. But especially for a lot of the words that I'm starting to learn in Japanese, or for just because I haven't been keeping up on my kanji or remembering the English mnemonics. Over time, some of the more obscure kanji have started to slip, and I'll probably study them more in the future, but for now I'm kind of just easily repping them and keeping them up through my other forms of immersion, such as vocab. So over the course of about a month, I was able to associate about the 1,000 most common kanji with a story and an English keyword, and I would use this when I was watching subtitles. So this whole time that I was doing this, I was constantly listening to Japanese media and Japanese anime at least a couple hours a day if I could. And when I was watching, I would often watch with subtitles, so that way I could try and practice the kanji that I had learned that day, or just keeping my memory fresh so I could see them as much as possible. So after learning kanji, it was time to move on to basic vocab and grammar, and the Quick Start Guide recommends doing this by reading through Take Him's Guide to Japanese Grammar and through purchasing a book called the Tango N5 book, which has the 1,000 most common Japanese words in it. So I bought this online and got a custom Anki deck from the Mass Immersion Approach website, and I studied this with 20 cards a day. So I would usually wake up in the morning and start my day by reviewing all of my kanji and then learning 20 new cards and reviewing my old cards, and then I would spend the day doing immersion. I set my retiring interval with the retirement add-on to be 4 months because my immersion diet is not quite exactly what I think it should be to keep these words going, but I'll talk about that in just a little bit. I started on April 30th, and with 20 cards a day, I was able to finish by June 9th. Towards the end, though, I did have a moment where I found out that the Morphman add-on had been updated for Anki 2.1, and when I went to go install this Anki add-on, and there's information about this all on the Mass Immersion Approach website, but when I found out that Morphman had been updated when I checked back in on the website, through installing it and trying to get it set up, I deleted a ton of zero-T sentences when I didn't really understand what I was doing, and this is all explained in there. And when I got rid of all of these zero-target sentences, it got rid of a lot of things I probably should have continued to review, but at the same time, they're in the most common 500 Japanese words, so they show up very often in my immersion, and I don't think I'm going to lose them, and if I did lose a couple of them, then they'll show up back up again really quickly. So I lost a couple of those, and those got deleted accidentally, but I was able to finish out the rest of the deck, and I'm studying a little bit. I'm continuing to review those cards. I just got the N4 deck today, and so I'm adding more cards to that alongside a little bit of sentence mining that I'm doing on the side. So the Quick Start Guide recommends reading all the way through Take Him's Grammar Guide. I read a little bit of it a couple years ago when I first got into Japanese, but it was really dry and without a basis of vocabulary and immersion. I really did not understand how to apply it, so I went back through and reread a lot of it. I think I got through the basic grammar and the essential grammar sections, and that's kind of... I plan to read through the rest of it over the next couple weeks, but I'm not super concerned about it, as different grammar points have been showing up in my immersion. I've been making cards for them or looking them up through a variety of different websites, and mostly trying to learn grammar through getting a lot of different example sentences that can show me really what it means in Japanese instead of getting an English description of kind of how it's supposed to work. But between different websites and YouTube videos and Take Him's Grammar Guide, I feel like grammar is the point that I'm lacking in the most right now, and that is really going to help kind of flesh out my immersion and connect all the little individual words that I'm hearing. But I also think that it's something that's growing with time, and I'm not super concerned about putting a ton of time into it now, because I think that immersion is going to flesh a lot of it out. So alongside the N4 deck that I'm going to be starting today, I have been doing a little bit of sentence mining for the past week, and I've been doing this through a program called Subs2SRS, which takes subtitle files and raw anime files and creates flashcards for you to study off of with the sentences. And then the other add-on that I've mentioned a couple times, Morphman, will scan all of those sentences, and using a bank of words that it already knows that I know, it will find sentences that only contain one word that I don't know. And so I've been using this to find what are called 1T sentences, which are sentences with only one word that you don't know. And I've been just taking a couple of these and adding them back into my review deck and adding some of my own custom cards as I find words and sentences that are 1T in my immersion. This has been working out really well, and I think this is one of the real strengths of the Max immersion approach, is an emphasis on learning not only words but grammar structures in context and trying to find them through immersing in native media. That's pretty much all I have to say about the methods that I've been taking so far. So now I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about what my immersion diet has been like. So my immersion over the past 90 days has fluctuated quite a bit, especially right in the beginning when I was studying just kanji. I was still in school, doing online school during quarantine and watching a lot of TV shows to practice my kanji, but as I started to get more into the school year, I started to have less time to do active immersion. So maybe it was more that I was just less diligent about it, but recently I've started increasing the amount of active immersion that I'm doing. I'm watching a lot more anime. I'm spending a lot more time actively listening to things that I previously watched. I used to watch YouTube series, like there is a YouTube series by a Japanese comedy duo, Yoiko, and they played Minecraft, and I remember especially right when I was first getting started, I figured if I started in a medium that I already knew what I thought would be, I thought I could figure out a lot of the vocab and understand a lot of the context. A lot of it went over my head, but I've been using stuff like that for my passive listening and going back and listening to anime episodes that I've already watched before so I can kind of see them as I'm listening. And so far they've been great. I just really haven't had as much time as I thought. For active immersion, at most I'll probably get in 2 to 3 hours a day. At least lately it's been probably at least 2 hours a day. The past couple weeks it was probably closer to an hour of active immersion if I was really lucky or pushing it, and a couple hours of passive immersion when I'm playing games or doing dishes or things like that. Going forward, I want to try and increase both of these, especially as my comprehension goes up and also as I have a lot more skill in Japanese that I have to maintain or improve on. The first thing I really want to do is add on to my reading immersion. Right now I'm having kind of a difficult time finding long form reading that's at my level, understandably. I'm trying to read kind of NHK easy news articles. Right now the sentences can tend to be really, really long, which can be kind of a struggle, but I know that it's just one of those things that with practice gets better over time. I want to spend more time with native Japanese media, I guess, in all fields, and as my comprehension is getting better, I find that to be easier and easier, and also I'm finding more ways that I can just include Japanese like in my own life. Okay, so the big reveal, I guess. Where are my skills at after 3 months? As far as listening goes, I watch a lot of anime, and when it comes to mostly slice of life anime, I can watch without subtitles and I'll understand the basic plot of what's going on. I watched a movie the other day and I totally understood the basic plot. You know, I don't understand a lot of the details, but I definitely understand the names of all the characters. I understand, generally where they're going and what they're doing and how they're feeling. I just don't know a lot of the nuances. A lot of very basic words, like, oh, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling sad, those kinds of things. When it comes to long sets of dialogue, I think is where I start to struggle, and more complicated sets of dialogue. Words are still pretty distinct, especially I have an exercise I do when I'm listening and to really focus, where I try to hear what they're saying so clearly that I could repeat it back out loud as if I had to just take their sentence and read it to somebody else. And that's really helped me separate all the words and sentences, and I feel like I don't really have a problem with that. I currently just need to learn more vocabulary. Most of the stuff that's going on, I understand what's happening grammatically. I just need to increase my vocabulary. It's kind of hard to judge my reading ability because I haven't found a lot of long-form reading that I can practice on. in the short future, I plan to pick up some manga, some easy manga to read. So right now, really the only forms of reading that I get are from anime subtitles, which so far are pretty digestible. At my level, at least most of the things that I can understand when I hear, I can definitely read. And if I'm given a sentence, there's probably a better chance that I'll be able to break it down and read it than if I hear it multiple times. Will I be able to understand it? It really depends on the sentence, and depends on, my comfort with what they're talking about. Just like most people, though, I think I would say that my reading ability is better than my listening ability. I just don't really have a chance to practice it as much, and I'm currently not very worried about that, because I think cultivating my listening ability at my skill level is going to be much more beneficial in the long run. The other thing about reading the other thing I read besides subtitles would be NHK Easy News articles, and the other problem with those is that the sentences tend to be really, really long, so it's a little hard to mine sentences because they aren't very practical for Anki use, and oftentimes they contain vocabulary that's useful to know, but that's going to show up often in NHK anyways, especially stuff like corona for the coronavirus and stuff like that. So I don't really need to make cards for those, and when I'm reading them, like I said, the sentences are kind of long and it's a little bit hard to go through without a narrative. So I'm going to be spending more time with that, especially as I pick up more vocabulary that makes it more comprehensible. But I'm also going to move into something like manga, so that way I have a little bit more context for the Japanese that I'm reading. So, that's basically it. I've definitely made a lot of progress over the last 3 months. I'm nowhere near where I was 3 months ago, and in my belief, I'm nowhere where I would have been if I had taken like a university course over this time or anything. Over the past 3 months, I've been able to pick up over 1,000 kanji and over 1,000 Japanese words and countless grammar structures. And 3 months ago, I was not able to watch any native Japanese media, and a couple days ago, I watched like a basic G-rated movie and had a good time, followed the plot. I've been watching K-On! Lately, and I understand most of what's going on, and that's something I definitely was not able to do 3 months ago, so I'm totally proud of that. But I still know I have a long ways to go, and I got a couple goals going forward. I'm going to try and make another update at 6 months, and by then I'm hoping to have finished Taekim's grammar guide, and I've added the next 1,500 common words, which will be coming from the Tango N4 book that I've talked about a couple times. And then this is probably past the 6-month mark, but when I get between 3,000 and 4,000 sentences is when I'm going to start gradually making the monolingual transition. But I know that's a little bit of a ways down the road, and I'm going to do a little bit more research when I'm coming up on that point. And going forward, I basically just want to make sure that I'm really cementing in the basic knowledge I have and creating like a good foundation of Japanese, so that way I can continue to practice it by increasing my immersion. In 3 months, I'm going to make a 6-month update video to update you guys on any changes I've made in the process and how my progress has been. But until then, if you guys have any feedback, feel free to leave them in the comments below, because I'm always looking for ways that I can improve my methods here. And if you have any questions about some of the specific things I talked about in this video, I highly recommend visiting the Mass Immersion Approach website, which is also in the description. Other than that, that's basically it. So thanks for watching, and